welcome to another episode of 7 Minutes. I'm with my co-host Beverly Swim, and on this episode, we're talking to Angela McFarland. Angela works in self-directed services, and she formerly owned a local newspaper, the Boston Journal. So Angela is very, very passionate about children with special needs and fighting through that rugged terrain of, getting the much needed services, for families. Very passionate about children with special needs. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Angela McFarland. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of 7 Minutes, where we talk to who's who in the 518, people who are influencers, professionals, businessmen and women, and we just want to know what makes them successful or how they gauge or measure success. So today, our guest is Angela McFarland, long-term friend of mine. I've known her since I moved to the Boston Spa area. Your job is, I want to say it right, New York State independent broker for self-directed services.
And that is correct.
Right?
It is a mouthful.
It is a mouthful. And formerly the publisher of the Boston Journal, and you owned that paper at the time, right?
I did. That was a very proud moment in my career because I was the first female owner and publisher and only the third non-family owner. It was owned by 5 generations of family locally, briefly owned by the Hearst Corporation, and then it was me. So
the Boston Journal. And I used to love that paper. We don't have any paper. We don't have any papers in Boston Spa.
You and I could go on and on about that. News is not the world that you and I, grew up in, and we fought a good fight for as long as we could. But it all comes down to dollars and cents, and digital really just, you don't need me to tell you, digital blew apart the world, let alone, our corner of the world. But in addition, if you remember, in addition to the Boston Journal, I actually had a media company, and I had several direct mail publications and, a couple little side gigs with a couple of local media friends. So I miss it every day. I love it, but I still get my creative opportunities out there. I still do some private projects for people in ghostwriting, but the work I do now within self-direction was an unexpected path. And as much as I loved my media career, loved it. It was a 30+ career that, again, was an accidental happening. The work I do now feeds my soul. And it's hard to explain.
Tell us about that accident.
So self-direction services are intended to allow people to choose the life they want to live in the special needs community. And that's a pretty big deal because it wasn't that long ago when if your kid had a little tick or if they were, nonverbal, non-ambulatory, everybody got thrown into an institution. So, now we're smarter and wiser and we realize hey, some people function a little differently. It doesn't mean that they're not capable of living a fully, being a full active part of any community in whatever way they're human beings, basically.
Right.
So it was my son's broker. My kiddo is diagnosed to Asperger's, ADHD, TDD, NOSH, all those fancy terms. And it was my son's broker who said to me one day, and he goes, Angela, gosh, you really should be a broker. And I'm like, why? That's usually my question. Everything. Why? Tell me why. And I have an accounting background. I've been a business owner, but I'm a mom, first and foremost. And my kiddo has a few impairments, but he's not as significantly impaired as some kids, some individuals that I've met. And you know what, Beverly? It was hard. It was hard. It was so hard. When you're a parent, that's a new experience. When you're a parent of a special needs child, well, it's not like you come pre-equipped knowing what you're doing. You just don't. So within self-direction, the beauty of it is it allows people to carve the life that they think is best for themselves or their person. That is beautiful. But now I understand deeply, more than ever, why my son's broker said I should do this, because by nature, I'm an advocate.
Mm-hmm.
And we still, now more than ever, we live in a time of overbearing bureaucracy, overreaching government. The things that families still go through to receive basic services would blow your mind. And my role within that, my role as a broker, is to work with the family, identify the budget that they're allowed to have and utilize for their person to be able to live independently or take community classes or have a community habilitation support work, whatever that looks like. My job is to help them with that number, help define where those numbers are going to go, and push that ball down the field. Seems like that would be easy. The challenge comes with the government management of the programs. There's just no two ways about it. There's still a lot of paperwork, a lot of pen and paper, repetitive, layers. And my heart, not only did I go through this, but my heart breaks for families that have to go through this, because you're in a life that is overwhelming to begin with. And that's not even counting if you're working or if you have other kids, and then you're dealing with school, and then you're dealing with doctors. And just to get the help that you might need, it can be a lot of work. Big picture, the system is far better than it was 30, 40 years ago. Did you guys ever hear of or remember the Geraldo Rivera expose about Willowbrook? You ever hear it? So,
Every time I think of Geraldo Rivera, all I can think is Al Capone's tomb.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'll tell you, and it was, of course it was, done in the 80s, and it was, 80s, no, earlier than that. I forget, but it's on YouTube. Mm-hmm. And all the commercials are out, but it's mind-blowing when you mm-hmm. see the conditions that human beings were put in mm-hmm. to live in.
And what era was that?
Well, I tell you, when you watch that Geraldo Rivera special, there are quotes. I mean, Bobby Kennedy was still the Surgeon General. Okay. So it was, early on, I want to say 60s, 70s, maybe 60s. But the one thing that strikes me about this programming is you can see, like, okay, we're living far better. We're smarter. We know that we have human beings that should be treated like human beings. But it still kicks me in the tail when I hear, and it was Bobby Kennedy, being interviewed, mm-hmm. saying the same things that we're dealing with now. How does government let this happen? How do we put these things on the back burner the way they do? Why are these people the last thought? And right. For as far as we've come, there's still some things that, Chris, you've known me a long time. I sit back and I say, why? Mm-hmm. Why are we doing 5 and 6 assessments for the same information to a family that just needs a break? They just need a break.
Let me ask you a question. Do you collaborate, or I should say, is the cooperation with the school districts, is it a good one, or is there pushback?
Well, interesting question that you should ask that, because mm-hmm. you would think that, and again, I'm not saying, there's a lot of people, a lot of good people within OPWDD, within our schools, within our governments that really do want to do the best jobs possible.
Right.
So you would think there would be unity, collaboration. There's not. Everything is in silos. Ugh. There is, I think, one of the craziest experiences that I've had in the past couple of years, not just with my kiddo, but with 2 other individuals that I work with, young adults. And there's money. There's so much money available. Mm-hmm. There's so much money available within agencies like Access VR and OPWDD. The money is astounding how much is available. Mm-hmm. not only are the services in some cases duplicated, but it forces the individual or the caregiver or the parent to work with each of these services individually. So when you ask about the school,
Mm-hmm.
it's like apples and oranges,
Right.
because you can be working with a family or an individual to cultivate the life that is in their best interest, the best quality of life. Our schools want the same thing, but their focus is academic,
Mm-hmm.
purely academic. There's times more, and I've thought about this a lot more lately, where I think, you know what made me think of this? This is such a weird thing. But as you know, my son and I, just got back from a vacation.
Mm-hmm.
And we were going through these, big security lines and everything. And I looked at Eric and I said, do you believe, because where we were standing from one end of the terminal to the other end, there was just lines and metal detector, all this stuff. And I looked at him and I said, do you believe there was a time when none of this happened? You just walked in the door, you went where you were going.
Mm-hmm.
But this is my tie-in. I can't help but think, gosh, we've done this. We've
Mm-hmm.
created this. What if we just stripped it away? What if we just started over? What if we actually let teachers teach and teach the creatives who are the creatives, and nurture the analyticals that are the analyticals? And God knows, where what if we brought back into schools personal accounting, home ec, shop, those things that you can't, you've got to be literally living with blinders on.
Right.
If you can't see in the world we live in now how it has impacted our lives and our kids now. So I've gone down a bit of a rabbit hole. I've gone down a bit of a deep dive in the past few months, because there is, at least clicked in my mind, this things that just seem to be making sense.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm an admitted conspiracy theorist. I think it comes with age, but I told you my kid was diagnosed Asperger's, and I remember being told all sorts of things from a list. Well, he's never going to be able to do this. He's never going to do this. One of the few times that being a black sheep really worked for me. I didn't listen.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't listen. And thankfully, there were some things that I didn't take at face value that has helped him to become this amazing young man. We still have our challenges, but my point is, now I'm looking and going, I think we have a bigger problem with ADHD in our world than people realize. So this reading, because I'm noticing between the ages of, I'm going to say roughly 16 to 28, we have kids on medications, overwhelmed with stress, anxiety, depression.
Right.
You know that this age group doesn't like real food.
Yeah.
They don't like the taste of it.
So before you came on, Beverly and I was talking about antidepressants. And what did you say about, Beverly? What was your statistic on that?
I don't remember the number, but my son was talking to me about the number of people in our country today, especially, 14 to maybe 20, 27, 28 that are on antidepressants is just skyrocketed. And we noticed that the correlation between Facebook and how many people and how much time is all relative.
Now layer in our food supply. Now that our food supply has been messed with for a good, over 30, 40 years now, where a lot of chemical processing, a lot of artificial things. So you've got this happening. You've got the rise of medications. How many pharmaceutical commercials do we see on TV? And everybody's happy. Pop a pill, you're happy. Take this pill, you're happy. The side effects are that your eyeballs are going to fall out and your butt's going to fall to your ankles, but there's sunshine. Wow. Do you know, it was last year, I think, pharmaceutical companies they made the most money that they've ever made, billions of dollars. So now when you look at that trifecta, the messing with our food supply, the rise in technology, the fact that we're all fatter and sicker than we ever have, and we're being dependent, we're not leaving the house, and we're wondering why our kids are stressing. We're not sending them outside in the sun. They don't know how to interact. They do not. And I have a nephew who I adore. I love with all my heart. You cannot have a fluid conversation with this child.
I can be like that sometimes too. Beverly, you were going to make a point about something when she.
Well, when you froze, what you were talking about gave me reminded me of a story of a woman who was told to take her daughter to a psychologist, psychiatrist, whatever, because she was acting out in school.
Yeah.
So so the three of them go in the room together, and they're talking, and the doctor says, you know, would you mind, Mom, just stepping out into the hallway with me for a minute? And he turned some music on, and he left the room. They left the room and shut the door, and they went around the room to the window to watch in. The girl got up and danced, and he said, she doesn't need medication. You need to get this girl in dance classes and get her moving. And fast forward 30 years, she's now star on Broadway and choreographer and everything.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that story.
And you know, just when I was growing up, we had kids that were off the rails, but the teacher sent them out to run around the schoolyard 3 times. They came in and they were fine. So
exactly. And that's, Chris and I have talked about this a lot. I'm a huge proponent of boundaries. I wasn't always very good at them, but now I see the need for a certain amount of structure, but common sense. Now we are surrounded by not only the food toxins, the tech toxins, the stress, the negative, all the blah, 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 blah. It comes down to the fact that our bodies, we're machines. And if we don't naturally produce the right amount of melatonin, the right amount of dopamine, the right amount of oxygen, all of these things, then you know what? We're not going to feel good, and we're not going to function well, and we're going to be depressed, and we're not going to have jobs. And you know, it goes on and on and on. And then, I don't know if you guys ever do this, but you ever sit back and think, am I a crazy person? This seems so obvious.
Right.
Why are we doing this to ourselves? And we've done it to ourselves. So the work within self-direction, it's pretty meaningful. It's pretty meaningful.
Well, it's very, very important.
Yeah. And there is no cookie cutter situation. Just like, you know, there's no two snowflakes that are the same. There's common threads, but each family, each situation is totally different. There's things that I'm seeing that are very, very constant. And these are things that I think in community, in society, whatever you want to call it, that we have to pay attention to. We've got a generation of parents that are all of a sudden realizing, like, wait a second, I'm getting older. Who's going to take care of Johnny?
Right.
Because they have, you know, and I don't believe anybody starts out in the world to do, you know, terrible things or the wrong things. We trust in our teachers. We trust our doctors. We believe everybody's omnipotent, but you know what? Things have really gotten off the rails, and we're seeing it. We're seeing it in ourselves, but in our kids. Our kids are really struggling.
Angela, I want to, because we're running short on time, but I want you to share with the audience how to reach you and, you know, get the services that you provide.
Call Chris. He's my people. No, don't call him. Chris got enough going on. Oh gosh. You know what? Usually I'm pretty easy to track down. So email, phone number, you know, I'm always available for the conversation. Okay. Even if somebody doesn't know if self-direction is right for them. there are a lot of choices and a lot of services out there, but still there's people that have young adult children that didn't even, somehow they fell through the cracks.
Okay.
I will willingly have those conversations with anybody that just doesn't even know where to start. So definitely, do you want me to say my phone number?
Sure, go ahead. If you, as long as you're comfortable.
Like radio call us at 518.
Yeah.
No, it's 518-956-0195. My email, I really got to get a grown-up email. It's just, you get used to your email. It's jpublisher1@gmail.com. Having those conversations, is where I really like to start. The system can be overwhelming. There's a lot of information. And even once you're in it, you're thrown more. Read this, read this, read this, read that. I have one family out of my caseload that, has the magic, nice and neat time to be able to turn this into their part-time, full-time job. That's not the reality.
Right.
I like to live in the reality with other parents and go, okay, what do you need right now? Because in the waiting times for approvals, we're going to have plenty of time to learn about all this other stuff.
All right. Well, look, good. Listen, a lot of people out there who are watching, you have children, you've banged your head against a wall trying to get services from your school district. You don't know what New York State provides. I suggest if you reach that point, reach out to Angela. Just ask her questions. She'll talk to you. And she sat down with me and my family. I appreciate that. And you're really a blessing. So thank you for coming on, Angela. We really appreciate it.
And honestly, I think we should just add on to that the truth. I keep it very, very real and very brutally honest, but it comes from a place of love. So we want to prepare people to have that real conversation. I will laugh with you. I will cry with you, but it will be real.
Okay. So thanks so much for coming on and try and enjoy the rest of your month. Okay.
Thank you.
Angela.
Good night.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.